Hey, my name is Jobby, and I feel the need to share a little secret with you. You guys remember my Godzilla Cross Evangelion Shiryu review, right? Well, about that. That wasn't real cum. I mean, seriously, do you think I would stoop so low as to rub real cum on my face? I don't blame you for thinking so low of me. The Evangelion Unit 4 is obviously from the anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion. And if I remember correctly, this specific Evangelion did not appear in the show. The Unit 4 is a variant of the Unit 3, which did come out of the show in one of the series' best sequences. But before I get into any major spoilers, or before you read the description, let me just say that the figure requires some minor assembly out of the box and some major assembly for something we'll talk about later. And a very cool feature here, the shoulder pylons are actually magnetic. And with those bits attached, I can safely say the painting and the sculpting on this figure is amazing. Now, if you're familiar with the basic Evangelion design, this shouldn't come as a surprise. You got the sneakers, the long slender legs, the long slender body, and some kind of monstrous head. But what sets this Evangelion apart from the rest is that beautiful chrome. Usually I'm not that big of a fan of chrome. That was a lie. Usually I'm not that big of a fan of chrome on figures, and that's because from my experience, this kind of paint has a tendency to flake off very easily. But in the case of this figure, the chrome paint that they used is more heavy-duty stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna beat the figure anytime soon, but you could rub one out with no problem. Not to mention it's very reflective. Adding to that feeling of durability is the fact that the majority of this figure is made out of die-cast metal, which makes sense considering this figure is a Soul of Chogokin figure. It goes without saying that all the die-cast metal parts gives this figure a nice weight. Of course, I determined the metal parts using my cold touch technique, but after an extended period of time handling the figure, the oil from my dirty hands starts to cover the figure in this warm, greasy film. This is one of the downsides of the die-cast metal. It stains easily, and it's definitely not because I don't wash after a session. Another downside of the die-cast metal is that the weight of some parts weighs down on some of the joints. Yes, he might be heavy, but he doesn't feel the most solid.
I thought you said all Evangelions are girls.
Because of a minor spoiler for Evangelion, every Eva is biologically female.
Why are you calling this a he?
Well, that's because I'm trying to stay on the safe side. According to a lot of the comments on my last Evangelion review, Unit 1, 2, and 3 are the only female. At this point, I could give less of a flip, so I'm just calling this a guy for simplicity's sake.
No! You should take the time to find someone's proper pronouns or else you should be executed.
The fuck? Are you some kind of radical progressive? Knife. And the progressive knife looks pretty cool, but I feel that it might be too small. I mean, when you plug it into the hand, it's a very loose fit, so be careful not to lose it. Fortunately, it's completely possible to store the knife somewhere. And to do that, you gotta remove these shoulder pylons and replace it with this pair. Again, they're magnetic. And on his left shoulder, this little flap can open, and you could just stick the knife right into there. Folds up real nicely, and there you go. And on his other shoulder, you can flip out this panel to reveal a row of churros? I honestly don't know what that is, but it's a cool feature, I guess. Maybe it's ammo for one of his guns? I don't know. How do you exactly reload the pallet rifle? And if you wanted him to double-hand it, you can switch out one of these grabby hands with one of the open hands. And then you can position the arms to get something like this. And if you're not using the pallet rifle, you could always put it in this included case. We'll put that off to the side for now, but I can't say that it plays a part later. Admit it, my foreshadowing is just as bad as Hideaki Anno's. You also get a bazooka, plugs into his hand of course, and it looks just as awesome as you'd expect. Surprising that it doesn't weigh down the figure at all, but I guess that's due to the die-cast parts in the feet. You just kinda had to fight against the loose joints, fuck. Let's get this out of the way, and talk about what I think is the figure's coolest accessory. So cool, in fact, that transformation sequence. And here we have the positron rifle. I'm not too sure if this thing came out of the show. I mean, it might be the rifle they used in Operation Yashima, but I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong. But whatever the context of this thing is, it looks fucking awesome. And it's worth mentioning that the scope and the handle were separate parts. You don't get instructions, but assembly is super simple if you look at the pictures. So you get 3 entry plugs. And as you can see, they're attached to a model kit runner. Some other pieces that we'll talk about later are also on a runner. And if we go to his back here, this hatch can open, and you could insert one of the entry plugs into there. And for those of you who don't know, the entry plug is where the pilot of the Evangelion sits, which makes this feature kind of funny. You could also use that missile launcher gimmick to make opening the hatch easier. As for the other 2 entry plugs, save those for later. And you get an umbilical cable. There's a hinge joint here, which makes plugging this thing into the back easier. And again, for those of you who don't know, Evangelions run on external power. They could run for a short time without the cable, but eventually they power down. The cable's not posable, which is kind of a shame, and it leads to nowhere. But unlike the Evangelion Unit 1 model kit, this cable can actually plug into somewhere. Almost all of the figure's accessories can be stored on this included stand. And as I mentioned earlier, major assembly required on the stand. Just look at the pictures and you should be fine. Let's get into it. And here we have the, I'm not sure what to call this, the display mode. This is a great looking display. It looks like the Eva is resting in a docking bay and getting prepped for battle. And the stand itself has a decent amount of mechanical detail. But unfortunately, nothing really plugs into the stand. And that's including the figure itself, but I wasn't about to drop that shit. And the text on the stand is beautifully done. But surprisingly, it's not in Japanese. And yeah, this looks cool and all, but I'd rather display the figure in a way that takes advantage of its posability. Ball joint at the head, the mouth can open. Ball joint at the neck, allows him to look up that far and look down that far. Ball joint here. Ball joint at the shoulder, which allows for rotation. The arm can't move out that much. Ball joint at the elbow, double bend at the elbow. And every ball joint can be double ball joint at the wrist. Ball joint at the chest, ball joint at the waist, allows for an arcing back and a crunch. Of course, every ball joint rotation at the leg can move back that far. Pretty good spread. You got a thigh. Double bend at the knee, ball joint at the ankle, allows it to move up and down, and it allows for a decent pivot, but for some reason the pivot on the other foot is much more powerful. Hinge joint here, and a toe bend. Posability on this guy is pretty good, but for something as lean and flexible as an Evangelion, it's actually kind of disappointing. It could have used one more segment on the body, the spread on the arm is disgustingly limited, and the ankle pivot could have been better. But hey, at least it had a decent amount of swivels.
What have I done?
For a Soul of Chogokin figure, this guy is surprisingly small. Here's Figma Matic Academy, SH Mazaraj Godzilla, Masterpiece Optimus Prime, the Evangelion Godzilla crossover Shiryu, and the rebuild of Evangelion Unit 1 model kit. And they're obviously in scale. And even though I think the figure's too small and the posability could have been better, I can still say that overall, the figure's awesome. Definitely get this figure if you're an Evangelion fan. But not at that price. I love me some Soul of Chogokin, but they gotta calm the fuck down. Luckily for me, I got this in my P.O. box, and thank you to Richard Moy for providing this figure. And if you wanted me to review your figures, go ahead and send anything you'd like to my P.O. box. That's P.O. Box 329, Norwalk, California 90. Also sit tight for another P.O. box unboxing video. I still do want to make those videos a thing, but putting it in my schedule is proving to be quite a challenge. And even though I'm getting to a point where I'm losing faith in my own running gag, I just gotta find it in myself to believe in the heart of the swivel cards.